Welcome back to the last regular day. I say regular day because more on that in a second. Last regular day of Dominion Menagerie previews. So his is a second later. It's probably like 3 or 4 seconds later, but don't sue me. Um, we're apparently going to be getting more previews at the rate of about one per day until we've previewed everything and/or the set is out, at which point we've previewed everything because the remaining rulebook of all the rest of the cards will come out or whatever. Um, so I guess keep looking out for more card preview review thing videos like this one from me. Just they won't have as many cards in them. Anyway, let's go with these cards. No particular special theme to these cards. Uh, let's just jump right in. First one is Mastermind, 5 cost action duration. It says it doesn't do anything for you right now, but at the start of your next turn, you may play an action card from your hand 3 times. So it's like King's Court, except it doesn't do anything right now, and it does it next turn. Um, the effect has got to be much weaker than King's Court's effect. Just because, well, the main reason being because a lot of the power of King's Court is going King's Court, and then playing a bunch of actions 3 times and chaining your King's Courts. And you can chain Masterminds, but it takes multiple turns, right? You play a Mastermind, then at the start of your next turn, you have to have another one in your starting hand, first of all, or from the rest of your start of turn effects, right? You could put another one into hand from Gear or draw it off Sinister Plot or Crop Rotation or something. But you have to have a basically before you've played anything in your action phase, you've got to have another Mastermind in your hand. So you get to play that 3 times, and then it's only the next turn that you get to start going. Okay, I'm going to go playing three things 3 times, and if you want to be able to then king, 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 it's going to take many, 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 many turns. So, okay, whatever. Let's not get too bogged down with that. Card still seems pretty strong to me. Pretty strong. Um, just because tripling something is a really strong effect. You do need to have some way of lining something up in your next turn, but there's a lot of ways to do that at this point via saving them from the actual event save or similar effects like I mentioned, gear or scheme or having other duration draw. Um, it's pretty likely you'll be able to hit something with this. It's plausible that you'll be able to hit um, either uh, a payload card or a deck control card if you want to be able to hit which one of those or the other. If you're hitting duration cards, this is going to stay out longer. Um, keep that in mind. I guess King's Court was already staying out with your duration card, so that's not that big of a difference. But I'm just trying to think, right? If I hit a village at the start of next turn, then this has done nothing for me this turn. But then next turn, I have, you know, a couple of extra cards and a ton of extra actions. So that's really nice. Um, I guess, right, we could think about, we have the steady state of, we have one of these we're playing every turn at the end of our turn. And at that point, they take up one spot in our hand every other turn, and they draw us, if we have a cantrip, a couple extra cards every turn. That's a strong card, but it's not nearly as broken as King's Court. It is cheaper, which is certainly a big point in its favor, but overall, I think this is only going to be a very good card and not a nutso busto card. So I think, like, if you compare this to, say, Hunting Party or Lab, I think Mastermind might be, well, in a real way better in most cases, um, but not to the extent that King's Court is. So I Power level wise, I'm going to say that I expect Mastermind to be maybe around the same level as Captain. Of course, Captain is a very strong card, but it's not, oh my gosh, this is the most broken card ever, which is something that you might reasonably levy as a charge against King's Court. Let's move on to the next card, which is Black Cat. Black Cat says it's a 2-cost action. It says plus 2. It's an action attack reaction. It says plus 2 cards. If it isn't your turn, each other player gains a curse. And then the reaction part says when another player gains a victory card, you may play this from your hand. So, um, well, if you're getting it off for each other player gaining a curse, drawing 2 cards, then that's like Witch. And it only costs 2. And that's very, very, very strong. Having said that, your opponent is not going to be gaining victory cards on a turn that is not your turn. So that gets around like, oh, they remodeled to my governor, and that gets around I ambassadored them estates. That's not going to get you the reaction here. Or it will get you the reaction, but it's not going to get you the cursing attack, right? Um, so that's an important thing to note, right? If with ambassador, you can ambassador them estates and use this as a quasi lab because you don't have to use your action to play this. You get a react to play it. Uh, but you're not going to be able to give them a curse because you didn't give them an estate on your own on not your turn. You gave them the estate on your turn. Now, in 3 or 4 player with ambassador, opponent B gives out estates. Opponent C takes an estate. You react this. You curse opponents B and C. So, right, different dynamic in multiplayer with ambassador, but I'm not going to get too bogged down in that because I don't talk about multiplayer that much. I'm not a big expert on it. Anyway, so this has some shades of like Road Network, where the reaction effect dissuades your opponent from buying green cards, which probably doesn't matter much, but it's nice for the greening phase, but it doesn't do that much beforehand. In the case of Black Cat, it's a draw 2 beforehand, and sometimes that's a fine card that you're reasonably happy to have anyway, um, because you need to draw cards and you have a bunch of villages, say, right? So you're going to want to add it to those decks, fairly often. You're not going to count on the cursing effect being very strong very much, though, I think, because people usually don't get victory cards until close to the end of the game. And by the time they do, yes, cursing them is still going to matter, but it's not going to matter that much because it's also not happening that fast. I mean, I guess you could have a hand of like 4 of these and start chaining them, but that seems not very realistic very often. Maybe, I guess we could think about that. Also, this reaction is a bit worse against, I would say against discard attacks, but they have to be gaining the green card before they're playing the discard attack, which doesn't happen very much because usually you buy green cards. You don't gain them like mid-turn and then play discard attacks, but I don't know. If you have a knight that's for sure going to be poverty, a knight, N-I-G-H-T, not K-N-I-G-H-T. So if you have a vampire, right, that you know is going to come in and attack you, and you know it's going to be poverty, then maybe you don't react this. But I don't think that's going to come up very much. Anyway, what am I trying to say here? I think basically you mostly want to be getting this if you're happy with the draw 2, and the reaction bit is just kind of a nice little bonus, and the attack bit is even a smaller bonus. But it is points at that point, right? The junk doesn't hurt their deck that much because they're only getting a curse or two, but and they can maybe there's a pretty good chance they can deal with a curse or two at that point in the game. But the drawing two might be pretty decent, kind of like Road Network, right? Um, what I want to think about is the situation where you somehow have built a deck with a lot of these, and then in the greening phase, you get a react, 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 and suddenly their deck, it has a ton of extra curses in it, and that's really, really good for you. So I'm trying to think, is that worth trying to build your deck to where this is a big part of your draw, right? Instead of going for Smithy Village, I'm going for these in villages. Um, you're drawing a lot less. I think the fact that you're drawing a lot less is pretty bad. So my gut reaction would be that it's not worth it. But I'm actually, the more I think about it, being able to maybe give out 3 or 4 or 5 curses at once might make up for that, because it really hurts their ability to green. I mean, it depends on how well they're going to be able to deal with the curses, how quickly they're greening, right? If they're getting all their greening in one turn, then the attack bit is only points, which is, you know, something, but not that powerful. I think mostly you're still going to want um, smithies and such, cards that draw you more than two. But if it's easy to pick up cheap cards because you have a lot of plus buy and you're not that pinched on villagers, then it even more incentivizes you to get this. You're already slightly more incentivized to have extra villages and more of these because you're then more reliable, right? 2 villages and 2 of these is a lot more reliable than a village and a smithy, even though they draw the same amount, just because you're just more likely to find something to start your chain of village and draw card off. But in general, you want the village and the smithy anyway because it's cheaper and easier to get. But if somehow it's not that much cheaper or easier to get, then you're especially going to want village, village, this over village smithy because of the reaction bit, which is going to help you in the end game. Um, Also, if you're building with a lot of these, it's going to disincentivize your opponent from getting, say, nobles or mills, victory cards that aren't necessarily just about scoring points and ending the game. It's not going to come up that much, but be aware of it. Yeah, I think this card is pretty niche, fairly weak, uh, but a role player. I like that the card exists and it's going to make you think. Last card of the day is Wayfarer. Wayfarer is a 6 star. We'll get to the star in a second. Cost action card. It's +3 cards, and you may gain a silver, which is pretty nice. But then below the line it says it has the same cost as the last other card gained this turn, if any. So what I'm assuming this means, and what I think this has to mean, is it costs 6. If there haven't been any cards gained this turn, it costs 6. But if there have been any cards gained this turn, whichever the last one of those was, and this is going to mean that player order matters for like governor, right? The order at which things go in and people gain things is going to matter, right? If you gain a border village and then gain a cheaper card, you gain the border village first and then you gain the cheaper card, and that's going to matter maybe. I don't know, right? So be on the lookout for little rules, things like that. But it has the same card as the last other card gained this turn, if any. It doesn't say the last card you gained this turn, it said the last card gained this turn. Which means if your opponent's gained a card this turn, and then you have a Wayfarer, your Wayfarer costs the same amount as the card that your opponent last gained. So let's say your opponent remodeled with a governor and turned their gold into a province. You didn't remodel anything. Your Wayfarer now costs 8. If they go to remodel again, your Wayfarer now costs 8. Um, this interacts with cost reduction. I'm not sure how, right? Let's say your opponent plays a workshop, gains a 4 cost. This would cost 4, then plays a highway. This costs 1 less. The card that was gained also costs 1 less, but I think you've lose track isn't the rule, but you've effectively lost track of that, right? I think this imprints at the time the card was played, so it costs 4, and then changes with the cost reduction, so it costs 3, but it doesn't change to match what that card now costs. So it's not 3 and then additionally cost reduced to 2. I think it just gets cost reduced to 3 because when the card was gained, it cost 4. And that's what this is keying off of. And then there's another modifier that's saying, oh, it costs less, right? Similarly, if there is a quarry in play, my interpretation of the rules, and again, look up the rule book, but let's say there is a quarry in play and your opponent gains a province. This would normally cost, or you gain a province. This would normally cost 8 because it costs the same as the province, but then the quarry in play makes all actions cost 2 less, so this costs 2 less. So this costs 6. Even if the quarry was in play, I think, even if the quarry was in play before you gained the province, although I'm not sure of that, it could be that if you played storyteller and played quarry, and then you gained the province, then that makes this cost 8 because the cost reapplication effect from gaining the province might be more recent than the cost reallocation effect from the quarry and thus make this cost more. I don't know how that interaction works, so look that up in the rules or the FAQ or from a ruling or something, right? Anyway, let's talk about this card's power level because I've just been druthering on about druthering is druthering. Anyway, I've been talking about rules implications of this card that I don't actually know, but do look out for those kinds of edge cases because they could be weird. The main point of this card is that it costs 6 and it's a smithy that can gain you a silver. And gaining a silver is a nice ability to have because it's a smithy that lets you increase your payload over time. So if I'm building a deck that draws itself, then every turn I can increase my payload by 2 by gaining that silver and spend my buys on not having to increase my payload as much as I otherwise would, so I can spend them more on deck control, right? That is a powerful effect. I don't think that effect is worth it costing 6 though, generally, because if we look at all the other variants of Smithy that cost 5, I think the ability to filter your draws via Catacombs or Journeyman is probably generally stronger than this effect of being able to gain a silver. I think that, Wharf, certainly, or Barge that we've seen already, I would very much expect to be better than the ability to gain a silver. Same thing with Margrave, right? I think that most of those effects that you're getting on these 5-cost smithies are stronger than the effects that you're getting off of Wayfarer. Like, compare it especially to Swashbuckler, the ability to sometimes get that coffers and I guess sometimes get the chest tends to, I think, be better than the Wayfarer effect, right? Um, so take that for what it is. But I mean, sometimes those aren't available and costing 6 isn't that much different, so you do it and you're fine, right? The bigger thing is that changing the cost of this card might make it much cheaper than 6, right? If I have 6 and 2 buys, I can buy a silver and buy one of these, and suddenly this costs 3, and this is a steal and a half for 3, right? No, you don't have to gain the silver also, right? And in a lot of cases you will, and once you're drawing your deck, you want to increase your payload, so you likely want to gain that silver. Also, once you're drawing your deck, you might want to make these cheaper, so you make this cost 3, and then you can buy this first if you're wanting to buy more expensive cards. If you were wanting to buy cheaper cards, you want to buy those first to make this cheaper anyway, probably. But right, it can self synergize by getting a silver and then making this super cheap. That's something to note. You could do gain and play, right, with this if you're drawing your deck to where you use some of these to draw and gain some silvers, and then suddenly your payload is actually already increased for this turn. So that's something to note as well. So if you're drawing your deck, I think this card looks very, very good mostly because it can be cheap, but also because it can be gaining you that payload that you don't then have to buy, which is nice. This card seems very, very good in those situations. If you're not drawing your deck, you may well not be wanting to play with this. But if you have a way to gain something cheaper and then gain this, and have that something cheaper not interfere. I mean, maybe just the first one of these, right, makes it a reasonable card for money, I guess. I mean, I think really just the effect that it can be cheaper means that if you have multiple gains a turn, other than just from this, you're really going to be pretty incentivized to draw if there's a village around. So I think this card is just going to be extremely strong there. Right, Smithy is good because it costs 4. It's, I think, one of the better Smithies. This might cost a lot less than 4. If you can get a lot of villages and a lot of buys, this card should be very, 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 very good. And gaining the silver, especially optionally, should be very, 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 very good because it helps you take care of your. I think this is a really, really strong card. I think, in fact, I might say that I think Wayfarer may well be stronger, probably is stronger than Mastermind. Both of them are stronger than Black Cat. I think this card is one of the strongest cards we've seen previewed so far from this set. The ways might all be strong. I don't know. The stuff we saw yesterday was pretty strong too, but I think this is up there with Barge. It wouldn't surprise me if this is better than Barge usually. Obviously, it depends on you being able to effectively cost reduce it. You might cost increase it to do shenanigans, I guess I should also say, with to do shenanigans with trash for benefit cards. Uh, it's a little bit hard for that to really happen because what trash for benefit card really needs it to cost more than 6 to get a significant effect. Well, there are cards like that, like Apprentice, say, where you want to draw 8 cards instead of 6. The problem with that is how you also need to be able to draw a province before you're playing that trash for benefit card. And that just doesn't come up very much, but it might. I think mostly it's about the cost reduction effect of this card. But that's going to do it for my coverage today. We'll be back soon. I'm not sure whether it will be tomorrow. My guess is it'll be Monday with the next previewed card. But until then, get in the comments section. Tell me things I've missed. Nice, interesting interactions that are cool with these cards. You could tell me all about the rules on how this thing interacts with cost reduction. Or, if there's some neat combination that I've missed. I love to hear all that stuff. You guys have been great this week. I like to hear more from you. And thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for commenting. We'll catch you again soon with the next card. Bye, everybody.